Hello there, friends. Andrew with the Bangs here, and on today's episode of She Wonders Why, I speak with my friend from Twitter named Visa. Now, it's sort of interesting. I was connected with him last year sometime, and someone suggested that I should have him on my podcast. So I decided to keep an eye out on what particular thing we should talk about, and I did, but it was just so hard to pin Visa down because he has so many like plates spinning. Is that the phrase? And then finally I was like, you know what? I don't have one thing to talk to you about, Visa, but I'm just gonna have you on. We'll figure something out, you know? And it's awesome because he's made a little book of his most popular threads from Twitter, and it was just the perfect timing to have him on my show. So we talk about, he has a bit of a mantra, friendly, ambitious nerd. And that is sort of the starting point that we begin with, and it kind of just takes off from there. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and leave me a comment, give me a like, and subscribe if you haven't yet. We
Okay.
are started officially. Please continue. Hi, Visa.
Hi, Andrea. How's it going?
Good. I interrupted you because I hadn't
Right.
started recording. So please continue. You started your channel. That's
Well,
where you were interested.
all right, yeah.
in.
So I've had my channel since like very long ago, like 2005,
Yeah.
but I wasn't making videos specifically. I mean, I would upload. I played guitar on some videos, and I had like videos of my friends, like the kind of really random kind of hodgepodge thing. But I think last year or late last year, I just had the feeling that I should be making more YouTube videos, like deliberately. Like it just kind of became clearer to me that like video is a channel that I should spend more time on. And so I started in like late December, early January. I started doing some book reviews. I started just picking a topic and talking about it for half an hour. And then now this COVID stuff is happening, and I have friends telling me like, "Wow, it's such um like good timing that you've started making these videos right around the time when everyone's stuck at home and they want to watch videos and stuff," which is kind of funny because I remember when I was starting my video, I remember thinking, I'm so late to the party in a way. But I guess that's it, you will always feel like it's late, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then whoever comes later on will be like, "Oh, I should have started earlier." Like you'll always think that you should have started earlier.
Unless you're like the people who bought Bitcoin back in the
Yeah.
day. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about I don't know what you call these words. They're like your mantra or your like life goal. I don't know. So you can tell me what you call what you call. So friendly, ambitious nerd is like your thing.
Yeah.
Can we
Well,
talk about it?
Yes, let's do it. Well, so it's the title of my book, and I have been wanting to write some book for a very, very long time. And, my approach has always been very bottom up, meaning I didn't want to like come up with some clever title or come up with some like let's think about what kind of book we're going to write and then let's write it. I didn't want to do that because I'm not sure why. It's just not my style, I guess. I've always had opinions on everything. So even before I wanted to write a ebook, I was blogging a lot. I tweet a lot, right? So I just have a lot of stuff everywhere, and I decided that okay, like I want to ship something that is like, so people would read my tweets and then they would say, hey, like or they would read a couple of blog posts and then some people would say, hey, you should write a book. Some people would say like, is there anything where I can read all your stuff in one place? Because not everyone likes to use Twitter. Like some people, they see like they're not like native Twitter users like us where they're scrolling through Twitter every day. They would prefer to have something separate. And so I'm like, okay, I have an audience and people want to read my writing. But then I agonized about it for a long time. Like, what should my first contribution be? Because I feel like my advice to other people is not to overthink it, but I overthink everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking things like, okay, what can I write about? I could write. So like I had like 10 ideas, I think. Like I could write about, productivity, but I didn't want my debut to be like, so it's like productivity for people with ADHD, or that kind of like uncertain, nerdy kind of chaotic vibe. But I didn't want that to be my thing. I didn't want it to be like, oh, that's Visa, the productivity guy. Like I didn't really want
Mm-hmm.
that. And then I also wanted to write like my personal life memoirs, but
Mm.
I'm like, at the same time, nobody, like I haven't done anything substantial enough that a person who doesn't know me would be interested in it. So like a memoir is kind of limited by, do people already know you or not? Like
Yeah.
if you're already well known, then a memoir makes sense. But if nobody knows you yet, like you don't want to be like, hey everyone, read my memoir. Like who the fuck are you?
Yeah, yeah. They're like I don't know you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So memoirs out of the picture. I don't want it to be too specific about brain stuff. I could do something about marketing, but again, that feels too careery, and I don't want my first thing to be like, I don't want to be known as the marketing guy. So I just kind of
Yeah.
right. So I just kind of listed out all of the things that I like, all of the things that I'm interested in, I'm good at, and like I guess slowly it just kind of I kept doing. I looked at all of my threads, and I got so many threads, and I tried to find what are like the common features about them, and eventually I kind of narrowed it down to, okay, I talk a lot about being nerdy. Like I talk about like just I do these threads where I pick some topic of interest and I just go googling for it and like write these long rabbit holes of what I found.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my nerdy side that. So so I found that people would sometimes say, hey, I love how nerdy your threads are. And sometimes people would say, wow, you're such a friendly guy on Twitter. Like, how do you do it? How do you make so many friends? Blah, blah, blah. And the thing that people often say in relation to those things is that like you're doing it so much. Like, like they know people who are nerdy, they know people who are friendly, but like people tend to kind of stick to what they know or what they're familiar with or what is comfortable for them. And I'm always kind of trying to do more.
Mm.
And so it just, as I like brainstormed and meshed it around, I realized that like, so ambition is the other variable that I care about. And so I just kind of pieced it together. I'm like, okay, like these are the three things. I can't remember now if there was another word maybe that I was thinking about. I feel like I might have tried to reduce things down to maybe like 5 or 6 words and then pick the three most strong ones.
Mm.
And now that I've already made that the book, it's like I've forgotten, like it's so sticky for me that I've kind of forgotten all the other, like I can't remember what was in second place or third place anymore. It's just, this is the idea that just it feels memorable, it feels distinct, like each part kind of plays an important role, and I feel like it condenses my overall vibe pretty well. And so now it's like this it's this virtuous cycle or this reinforcing loop where, having established that as my brand, which I'm comfortable making it my brand for now, because anybody who reads that, they kind of get the right vibe. Like it's not too much of any one thing, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've sold like I think 400 plus copies so far, which is pretty cool because I haven't. In fact, I shipped like imperfect version of it. I mean, it's complete, but like I'm not satisfied with it. So I haven't done like a intense marketing push for it yet. I want to ship the second, like version 1.1, which I feel is more polished and more kind of like well put together, and then I'll do like a more serious marketing push for it.
Right.
But even then, yeah, people are interested in it, and it's been very fun to see it come alive. Like I get to people will read it and then they'll tag me in it when they're reading it on Twitter, which is super fun.
Cool. Yeah.
If you followed me on Twitter, you don't actually need to read the book to get a sense of like, so the book is basically a condensed version of what I'm tweeting about all the time. So like if you follow me on Twitter, you basically get it. You don't have to read it to get it.
Right.
It's just
it's for the non-avid Twitter user. Well, can we go over one of the threads that you've included?
Sure. You want me to pick one?
Yeah.
Okay, so in under friendly, so friendly is like all the social stuff. One of the things that I included was my relationships threads. So I have like 5 different threads about relationships that have all gotten way more retweets than I expected.
Okay.
And so because those were like the most popular one, I think has like over 1,000 retweets. And
What?
yeah,
That's crazy.
about my wife and her ability to predict divorce from in amongst our friends remarkably
Oh,
well.
maybe I
Way
kind of
way in advance.
remember. I do remember like particular one on relationship that maybe we can talk about after this one um about not liking how eventually even your spouse you're like you don't like
Yeah,
them at times. You were really
yeah.
real about it. You're like no, like my wife is probably the person I like the most in the world. But even
And
then,
yeah,
do you remember that
yeah,
one?
yeah. So
Anyways,
that's
but
that's
that's
one of the 5.
okay. Okay, so but well, let's talk about your wife's ability to predict divorce.
I mean, yeah. So it's just, I mean, so the funny thing about that is when I was tweeting that, it was kind of just off the cuff, like off the top of my head, like, hey, you know what? I just remember. I think. So one of our friends had just gotten divorced, and then I mentioned it to my wife, and she was like, yeah, I remember when I told you like a year ago that like I mean, she didn't say they're gonna get divorced, but she was like, isn't it weird how like when they talk to each other, like the way they make eye contact and the way they like just little nuances in their communication style.
Uh-huh.
Like it's I think he was very dismissive whenever she said something, and she would like roll her eyes, and it's just this very, and like it's very subtle. It's very you
Yeah.
can't be sure in advance, but like it's the little details of how like the little interactions play out that you kind of know that, oh, if they have like a bigger conflict, like how are they going to handle it, that kind of thing.
Mm.
And so it was a thread about that, and that went pretty viral. And it, on retrospect, like it looks a little bit, I mean, I don't know if I would have written it the same way if I knew that people were going to see it that much.
Mm.
But because I think people who know me know that I don't mean it in like a mean spirited way, or like oh, we know how other people's relationship
Okay,
work,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's like it's not that. It's like we do root for everybody's relationships to succeed. We want everyone to be happy, and like we are not perfect. Like we have our struggles. It's just that like you can see these things. They are observable things, and it's worth kind of um thinking about them and discussing them with your spouse potentially, like before you get married. Like how, like, analyze your arguments and conflicts, and see how you communicate. Ask your friends what they see. Like you should like getting married is like the one of the most serious decisions you could possibly make, and it has like tremendous consequences, right? But like when we got married pretty young. We got married when we were 22.
Right. Oh, are you
And
the same age,
like
you and your wife?
we are both 29 this year. We
Oh,
went to
okay.
school together.
Okay.
And yeah, so a thing that so because my wife and I married so young, our friends who are our age, they got married like 5-6 years later. And so all our friends who are our age would come to us with their like marital problems and stuff, and we're like, how did you guys handle this? Because we're the same age, but we have like a few more years of experience.
Right, right.
And yeah, so I find myself very often forwarding stuff to my like friends who are about to get married and stuff like that. And so there are like 5 threads about relationships that were pretty popular, and I made it a blog post, and then now I put it into my ebook. I mean, so each time I kind of moved it to a more established channel. I tidy it up a bit more. I add some like links and stuff, and I try to make it more polished. But yeah, so and again, even if you don't get married, even if you're like not like single, and or if you're not have no interest in getting married, like understanding how marriage works, I think, is a useful thing to study, to understand just relationships in general. And I mean, even your relationship with yourself, it's all the same kind of fundamental principles of communication and listening. And so even if it's with yourself, it's like you have to hear yourself out. You have to don't interrupt yourself. Like it's pretty um comprehensive.
Mm.
And Yeah, so that's that,
But
relationships
wait,
and
I
friendship.
want to know how many she's predicted.
Like I think 5, 6 couples. Like
Wow.
she has a very good sense for people in general. Like she's very she's very sensitive to like when there is like other people's discomfort. I think she can tell, like sometimes even more like they themselves may not realize it, or they may not acknowledge it, I guess. Like
Mm.
someone's uncomfortable, but you ask them, are you okay, and they're like, no, I'm fine.
Mm,
But like
mm.
she tends to notice, and I'll be like, no, there's nothing wrong with them, and then like a few months later oh, okay, yikes.
So do you see it? Yeah. So she predicts it, but did you see it?
Right. So I have slowly learned to see the way she sees. Like, so it's
Oh,
like
okay.
it can be trained. You can practice it, and you can like so in that thread I talk about, pay attention to the communication styles, pay attention to look out for signs of resentment and like another one was like when people put each other down, even like for laughs, like in as jokes. Like it might be funny now, but there may come a point where it's not funny, and then
Don't
you
do
still have
that.
that habit. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it's those little things, and then just things like little throwaway things like when something goes wrong, or not even goes wrong, but like when someone uses their partner as an excuse, or as like a, like, oh, I can't do this, the wife, that kind of thing, like those little,
Mm.
like, again, it doesn't guarantee that it's gonna, it could be fine, but
Yeah.
like when you see like a 5 or 6 of these little things together, then it's like, are you happy? And they may say, yeah, they may say I'm fine, right? But like it's like shaky foundations, and
Mm.
then they may be fine, but then when something really bad hits, like maybe someone's got fired, or someone's mom or dad passes away, like something severe happens, then it's
Mm.
like they don't have the the infrastructure they need to weather those like disagreements or whatever, and then usually there's some blowout somewhere, and then people will say, oh, you couldn't have seen it coming, which is true, but it's like which is why also I would say it helps a lot to have struggled with someone about something before you get married. Like whether it's like traveling together or working on something together, like you have, again, like very often. So I mean, so it's actually it's a very interesting intellectual problem, right? So it's, and with very real consequences, which is most people in the world who get married, they marry the person they love the most. Like like at some point before you get married, you look at this person and you think, wow, you make me so happy. I love you so much. Like this is such a beautiful thing we have. And they get married, and then like a substantial percentage of it, like 20%, 30%, like whatever the things, like it ends up in divorce, and like a sizable number of people, like their ex-husband or their ex-wife becomes the person that they hate the most, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
like statistically, like it's just the way the world is, which is like some, like the entire species should sit down and have a conversation about this, right? Because it says something about, like, there's a systemic misunderstanding or systemic confusion that we are not talking about, that such a large percentage of, I mean, so even if it happened like, like 1 in 10 times or something, it's still pretty large, and it happens like almost, 1 in 4 ish.
Okay.
And
Okay. Yeah, I've
the
heard one
way
in three, but it might depend
yeah,
on where
it,
you are
it
in the
depends
world.
on, yeah, I think, yeah, 1 in 3, I'm
That's
not sure,
bad
it's
odds. That's not
yeah,
good odds at all. Can you imagine if you went
yeah.
in for surgery and it was 1 in 3?
Yeah, I think the 1 in 3 sounds extra scary, but it's the stats are like skewed by serial monogamists. So there are people who get married and divorced like five,
Oh,
six,
so
seven,
maybe
eight
it's
times.
more like for regular people, it's like one in
Yeah,
four,
so
maybe.
if you yeah, so like for first marriage, I think it's about like 1 in 5 or something. But that's still not
Oh,
great
you're
odds,
right
That's
because
still,
yeah, it goes up with two. Yeah, the second marriage and then the
yeah.
third marriage. Yeah, yeah. But you're right. Even 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 or whatever is not
Yeah,
good odds, like at
it's like
all.
you roll the dice, and if you get a 6, it's like like
Yeah.
you wouldn't take that bet, right? And the reason I think is fundamentally that we marry the people that we enjoy in the good times, but we need to marry the people who we can enjoy or appreciate in the bad times.
See,
So
now we're
we
getting into
optimize
that
for,
other thread, kind of like the one
yeah,
that I
yeah.
brought up. Yeah, yeah.
It's all
It's
right.
all
It's all
connected.
connected.
You're right. It's all
Yeah.
connected. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it and there's no it's not it's there are no like pop songs about this, right? Like
Yeah.
so like your infatuation and falling in love with someone in the good times is well understood and well kind of studied. Well, I mean, appreciate everyone gets that. But like the idea, it's counterintuitive that you should marry the person that you have the most like constructive disagreements with. It sounds
You
unromantic.
don't.
It
I've
sounds
never
unromantic.
thought those words towards a relationship. Like,
Yeah. So I mean, it would be weird, but yeah, it's kind of a strange thing to go in search of. But like I mean, like, with the people that you kind of have chemistry with, like I would say like it's important to prioritize having healthy constructive disagreements. Same
yes.
for like so I used to play in a band, and in a band it's a pretty intimate relationship because it's creative work, and like
Mm.
you're working on each other's work, and it's very personal. And yeah, it's like I've played in multiple bands, and the best working relationships are with the people who you can disagree with happily.
Hmm.
And so because it's inevitable that you will step on each other's toes. So like again, it's like a math problem, right? Like even if, let's say, your spouse is way less likely to upset you than anybody else. So the average person has a 10% chance of upsetting you, and your spouse has like a 0.1% chance of upsetting you because you get along so well. Like a 0.1% chance, but you're with each other every day for hours and hours and for years and years. So it's inevitable that you will upset each other somehow.
Yeah.
And like if so like so some people will think they should pick someone who's like very unlikely to upset you versus, and so there's like two parts of the equation, right? There's how likely they are to upset you and how bad it happened, how bad the outcome is when they upset you.
Yeah.
And a very very low probability of a very very bad outcome is when you make it happen over a long period of time, it becomes inevitable, and then you have a very bad outcome. Whereas it's better if you have periodic conflict, but the outcome is decent, like
Mm.
constructive.
Hmm.
And yeah, once you can see it, it becomes super obvious.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just don't see it, and they're not prepared for it, and nobody talks to them about it, which is super tragic. It's like if you consider that like the relationship between parents, between like spouses, and that affects the family, it affects the kids, and like wow, like it's almost like a crime against humanity that we don't address this better, right?
Well,
Like because
sorry. Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
like just we should be addressing these, we should be talking about these things all the time,
Yeah.
like
Well,
because it's
it seems
important.
like people talk about romance and dating and finding someone a lot. But yeah,
Mhm,
the post marriage, it's you don't talk about it till the divorce. But
mhm,
I 100% I like the way you word the constructive conflict a lot better because I have a thing where I've been married for 10 years and I have a
mhm.
thing where I'm like you need to have 10 fights before you get engaged.
Yeah, I
But like
agree. I
but
totally
I
agree.
like how you say it. I have the idea of the same concept, but your words are better. Like I like the way that you say a constructive conflict. So that's what. So when I say
Right.
fights, I've even told some people this theory of mine, and they're like fights.
Mhm.
Well, like what about
Yeah.
maybe like arguments? And I'm like, okay, fine, but like it just
Yeah.
friction,
Yeah.
like a working
Yeah.
it out, and that should be standard. Like people should
Yeah.
parents should talk about this with their kids about for their future
Yeah,
spouse
for sure.
and it's I heard it actually from Jordan Peterson the 10 I made
Mhm,
up 10 fights like I came up with the number but I
mhm.
went to one of his events a couple years ago and someone was a newlywed like those they emailed in the questions or whatever and one of them
Right.
about was how do I have a good marriage and he was like fight it out A
Yeah.
lot of it depends on how you were raised too, because again, like
That's true.
I didn't grow up with the dad. My dad passed away, so I didn't have a like someone to
Oh,
look at, a
interesting.
couple to look at.
Mm.
But I am not someone who can handle leaving conflict. I have to figure it out like
Right.
right away. And my husband, like, he decided that was okay. That he sometimes needs a drive, but you know, like most of the time
Mm.
he's pretty happy, even though he's not like that. But he's like,
Right.
okay, I could, and he decided again. We did this all when we were dating, and we dated only for 9 months.
Wow.
But
Intense.
I know, but I'm an intense person, so I got it all
That's
out.
cool. Yeah.
That's the thing. I think that's why some people can date for years, and they don't
Mm.
know the worst side
Yeah.
of the other person. Oh, we never fight.
Right.
That is not good.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway.
That's true.
Sorry, I went off a little bit on my own stuff, but I agree 100%. Like, you've got to show
Mhm.
that's the thing when you're dating, like, don't hold back. Like, I mean,
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
beginning, but like the first few dates, but like when you're a
Right.
month in, you should be
Right.
like able to get angry at the person
Yeah.
and be obvious about
Yeah.
it. It feels
Right.
like.
Yeah, I hear a lot from people who are kind of in this dating limbo, I guess, where like it sounds pretty terrible. Like I don't mean individuals. I mean like just the dating um life that people have. It's like, I mean, everyone has a lot of options, or everyone's kind of, nobody wants to be too kind of assertive about what kind of relationship they want. Like everyone wants to be chill. Like that's what everyone seems to think everyone else wants. And so it becomes this kind of like a shadow of a shadow, like a photocopy of a photocopy kind of thing, where
Yeah.
instead of people saying, I want kids, I want the travel, like, I like, here's what I want and here's who I am. And then like you kind of go through several mismatches until we get a match. Whereas people are like, I don't really know what I want. You don't like this kind of like flexible, whimsical, but not very certain thing. And like you said, people date for years in that state, and they don't want to disappoint each other, and they don't want to be lonely, I guess, or they don't want to face rejection. But then it's like that limbo state is so. Like, so when my wife and I got married, we got married at 22, and we were like, let's get married young so that if it doesn't work out, like we trust each other. We've been through enough that we know that if our relationship doesn't work out, like we can still be respectful to each other about it. Like, okay, this is not working out, right?
Yeah.
And so like if it doesn't work out, then like in 5 to 6 years or whatever, we're like, all right, like handshake, like we tried our best, it didn't work out, and then you move on, and then we'll be like in our late 20s, we can still date again. Like, it's still kind of an option. Whereas like
wow, that's
friends,
very, very amicable of both of you.
yeah, we always had that in common, I think, from the very beginning, which I guess you could say we lucked out. Like, so we
then
are
you
like the
worked
first
out.
people we each.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it worked
it's
out.
great. I mean, yeah. Again, I don't want to be like a lottery winner preaching to people how, I hear from good people who struggle with finding someone, and like it's not at all their fault. Like they are great people, and they like, so sometimes you just, I don't know, luck of the draw.
Yeah,
Or,
I feel like that as well. Yeah.
but like, so my general approach to everything, and so I'm the weird one, right? But my general approach to everything is to be extremely aggressive in going through as many options and possibilities as possible.
Okay.
So like, and that's part of what Friendly Ambitious Nerd is about, which is that like, like talk to 10,000 people, like talk to one person a day, every day. Because a friend of mine was asking me about this, and I said like, okay, imagine you have some, let's not talk about romance. Let's just say like a really, really good friend, like you soulmate, understand, like, like Paul McCartney, John Lennon, that kind of, Ben and Jerry, that kind of really, when you meet this person, they will complete you in this. I mean, you are your own complete person, yes, but when you meet this particular person, like your frequencies just resonate so well that like you challenge each other to be better, and like you unlock your creative mind melt, right? Imagine you have to meet like 5,000 to 10,000 people to encounter that person. So imagine you meet a new person every day for like 15 years, 20 years, you do that every day and you don't meet them, and you finally meet this person when you are 55 years old. Like, so what? Like from that day on, like your life will never be the same again. You now have this amazing friend that redefines your whole life potentially, right? Which, so for me, that's an idea that I get very excited by. Like some people, when they hear this, they're like, "Oh, dude, that sounds exhausting, man. Like, what kind of like incredibly idealistic and kind of crazy, weird idea that is." But for me, it's like the world is so big, and like our experience of it is always so small relative to how big the world is,
Right.
right? And like just I somehow managed to, I don't know if it's remaining hopeful slash idealistic, or if I'm weird, or I don't know what it is, but like I keep looking, and it's I meet new people every, I mean, like I encounter people on Twitter, for example, and every so often like I'll meet some new person who, and then I can introduce them to all of my friends, and then it's just everyone has a good time, and we underestimate the value of the unknown, basically. I think we all, and it's very easy to end up inhabiting the known space, like the place that you've lived in, the books that you've read, the music you listen to. Like it becomes comfortable, which is nice. But like there's stuff outside that, if you consistently, and like, yeah, the first like 10 things you try outside your comfort zone may all suck, but like the 11th thing may be amazing, so you never know. So it's like
I love that. I love that attitude. If you lived in like a time where there was still unknown lands, I think you would be an adventurer.
yeah. For sure, yeah. So since all the land has been explored, like, so now my thing is yeah, finding people mostly. I think each person is like a whole universe in a way,
Yeah.
and like, and a thing that I've learned. So as a person who works in marketing, for example, I've learned that there really is a lot of talent, and I mean talent in the broader sense, like not just musical talent or like writing talent or whatever, but like all the popular shit that we see, it's like, yeah, it's by talented people who also had marketing skills, or had like a marketing co-founder, or someone discovered
Right,
them, or
right.
someone, like, but for every one person like that, there's like a dozen people who just kind of nobody knows about, because
Yeah.
they and like you can see it, like you can see when someone does become famous, like you go to their YouTube channel, for example, and you see that they had like 200 videos before that nobody was watching, right? So there's
Right.
always
Yeah.
good stuff. And so if you have like this kind of aggressive search and like just the search algorithm, I guess, kind
Yeah.
of like just trying to like every day, like if you listen to a new song every day, right? Like in a year, like if each day you listen to one new song in a year, probably like 100 songs will disappoint you, but there's a very good chance you'll hear one song that's now in your top 10 favorite songs, because it's just like
Right.
it's, and then you just apply that philosophy to everything, and life becomes so exciting as a consequence. It's like, wow, like I don't know what's gonna blow my mind and surprise me.
Well, one of the things I did want to talk to you about was friendship, because because I watched your friend's video, and so it made me think about the and you have friendly in your brand there.
Yeah.
And also I think it's interesting because the way that you're so open to friends. And so there's two things. One is that a lot of people are really, they hold close to that word, and they don't call people friends until they're like inner circle almost.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing is to do with guys talking about friendship. And though I think that there's a sort of camaraderie amongst, say, in sports teams or in like bands, like you mentioned, but it seems like just because it's not talked a lot about amongst the male species, So I was just
Yeah.
wondering, I don't know, maybe I asked you two questions accidentally there, but I wanted to know about, because people have to have boundaries where you can't have everyone be your best friend, but you
Right.
want to be open to people. And then about
Mhm.
friends and guys. So I don't know which one you want to
Right.
tackle first, but
Okay, I'll start with the like the social limit kind of question, right?
yeah, I
Like which
guess it's
is
Dunbar's number. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, a thing that is true for me is that I have never really been able to. So I've never had like, well, I guess when I was maybe about 17 to 20, I had a group of friends who kind of all lived like within walking distance from my parents' house, and we would, we were all kind of in the same like periods of our life. Like we were like in Singapore, we have to do military service, so we were all kind of like going through that at the same time. So we would meet every day potentially sometimes, and just like we wouldn't even have to schedule anything. It's like just at 7 p.m. ish, like at least a couple of us would be at the coffee shop near my friend's place, and we'd just be there all the time, and
Mm,
we would be hanging out for years. And so I know of people who have like, like their four friends who they were friends since like school or since like college, like just like at some, and then they are the bridesmaids or the best men at the wedding, and they basically just spend like their whole life, they are like their ride or die, right? Like these 4 or 5 people who are your everything. I've never really had that quite. I mean, I had a little bit of that once, but like, and I'm still friends with those guys, but like, um, I don't think they meet every day anymore. It's like just life
mm.
changed for us. I know of people, so I have friends who have like their lifelong homies kind of thing going on. I don't really have that. I think I have always had this sort of I describe it as a long orbit, like a comet rather than like a moon or a planet, right? Like there's different orbits you can have, and I think by being clear with others. So I had some conflict in like my late teens with a couple of friends who, like, I think we had different ideas about what friendship is. And like I had a friend who's like, if you're a friend, it means you have to hang out all the time, right? And that's okay. Like it's okay for him to believe that about friendship, but like it's also okay for me to not. And like we
Right.
we didn't see eye to eye on that at the time. And so now when I meet new people, every new person I meet, they pretty much already know the kind of guy I am. So like it's way easier for me now to, like, people already understand, oh, Visa's this guy who writes a lot and is super prolific, is online all the time, like he's probably not going to be hanging out with, like, so some of my favorite relationships are people that I meet like once a year or sometimes even once every 2 or 3 years. And the cool thing is, because you meet these people at these long orbit rare intervals, it's like you get to see, like, you get to observe changes in each other that like your closer friends may not see. So like my wife and I see each other every day, so like
Right.
I wouldn't notice if there's something changing like year to year because she's my wife, I see her all the time. But like a friend that I meet once a year, they'll be like, hey, you look more happy now. Like, what, really? That kind of
Oh,
thing, like,
interesting.
right? Like, yeah. So I like these kind of long interval friendship things, and so I think that allows me to have more friends, like in that
I
in
see.
that kind of sense. Yeah, and I'm not great with like birthdays and like that kind of daily gesture kind of thing. But like what people do like about me, I think, is that they know that they can come to me with anything, like usually by text, for example, or
Yeah.
maybe they might call me. But like I'm very happy to be there for people when they need to talk about, like, their feelings, or they're in existential crisis. Like that's the kind of thing people come to me with. They're like, oh, I'm wondering if I should quit my job. I don't really want to talk to my wife about it, or like, like the kind of like
Yeah.
that's my thing that
Your
people
your
have come to
specialty.
associate with.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Somehow you're making me realize that I'm kind of like this pastor slash counselor kind of figure to my friends,
No, what?
which is,
It's
yeah.
good. That's what we talk out. That's kind of the vibe I get from your YouTube channel is that you talk out things for yourself and then it's on record.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, that's why I like talking with people, because it sometimes helps me realize things when I'm like, oh, I guess I
Yeah.
do think that. But okay,
Yeah.
because you seem to think that friends are really important, even though you say you have a long orbit.
Yeah.
So
But they
so
mean a
why are
lot to me.
friends
Yeah.
okay? Why are friends so important though? Because a lot of people, and I don't think a lot of people think no, they're not, but a lot of people don't even think about
Yeah.
it.
That's a So there are many ways to approach this. So I spent a couple of years. So after I got married, and then I moved from my parents' place to my current place, which is like, it's it's not like ridiculously far away. It's like a couple of hours, like an hour and a half ish away. So it's like far enough that it just becomes like it's no longer easy to like randomly meet my friends like
Mm,
out of the blue, like hey, you wanna like hey want to meet downstairs in 5 minutes, like that's
yeah,
not an option anymore.
yeah.
And I'm married now and they're all in university, and like we have like different, like it's like we're all still friends, we still care about each other, but like just after I got married and moved out and started working, like I felt like I was disconnected from my previous social environment. And so I did spend a couple of years kind of very isolated. I was very and semi deliberately, like I kind of, so like in the earliest phase I was like blogging a lot about like local politics, which is a whole scene, and I was very immersed in that scene. And so when I started work, I felt like I didn't have time for that anymore. Like I was like it was affecting my work because it was such a like political blogging stuff. Like you had to keep up with the news
Okay,
every day,
right, yeah,
comment,
yeah,
like it's super active. And like I also had my job to worry about. And like when I was trying to juggle both and I couldn't quite do that, I prioritized my job because I got bills to pay.
yeah.
And so it felt like I lost my friends and I lost like that that social activity that was giving me a sense of meaning and purpose. I mean, it's not like I was thinking, "Oh, this thing gives me meaning and purpose." Like you don't really think that. But
Yeah.
when it's removed from you and now you got nothing to do and you just kind of sit there and you're like, "Huh," like it's just I was very isolated. And I did, it was a very interesting experience. It was difficult. It was very difficult. It was unpleasant, but I learned a lot about myself. And I was doing a lot of journaling and reflecting and writing for myself. And I think what has always kept me going, even when I was like depressed and when I was lonely, and is like, so when I was really young, I used to read a lot of books. I was like a library nerd, and I would, and books were always beautiful and magical to me. Like the idea that you can go to a library and you can pick a book from a shelf, and like somebody wrote it, somebody sat down, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, somebody wanted to create an experience for you. Like he or she wanted you to read it, and like it's like made with love, right? Like it's a labor of love to sit down and write a book.
Mm.
And having read stories and read history and read about space and all those things, I just felt that there is in the library, or like the global library, or like the universe of libraries, there is this spirit of how would you say it? It's like it's almost an ethos. It's like a worldview, like the worldview of books, like even if it's books that have different worldviews, like, it's like this idea of the transmission of knowledge, or the
Mm.
transmission of perspective, like just people who participate in this process of articulating perspective, ideas, whatever, and sharing it with other people. Like having participated in that, I think gave me a sense of my place in the world in a way. And so like I think I can say quite literally that like libraries are my church, in a sense, like in a secular sense. Like it's a like to I one of my tweets is like, libraries are lighthouses and churches to the light of human consciousness.
Hmm.
Meaning, and it's like it all ties together. So it's
Okay, oh,
like,
I actually was gonna be like, I'm gonna ask about friends in a minute and see how it
yeah.
connects. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, it's with religion, people will say things like, you're never alone because God is always with you, right? Like, so I'm agnostic-ish. I don't really, I'm whatever, but I always think that like my thoughts and my ideas or whatever, they are informed by everything that I've read and everything that I've heard and whatnot. And so, like, even when I'm alone, like the light of human consciousness is with me because it's in my thoughts and it's in my all those things. And I think that experiencing that, um, just it's like a think about it as like, books are crystallized like idea matter. Like there's idea matter in your nervous system, in your brain, whatever. And like you when you read enough books, you have received that idea matter from other people, and then you have to share it. It's like a circuit, I guess. Like if it comes to you, you can't hold it in, because if you don't discuss it with anybody, you go crazy. Like it's or you don't know. Like it's just you see that it's a process, like, and you have to share it. And so for me, it was always just very self-evident that like life is for sharing, like
Okay.
ideas are for sharing,
Okay.
right? So it's all and yeah, so like even when I was alone, like when I was journaling for myself, but like the end goal was still I want to I want to work on myself and be more articulate and be better at managing my notes or whatever, so that I can eventually help other people.
Okay.
Like and so that's my experience, and I have met other people who are like me in a lot of ways, but they don't quite have that one particular piece of like um, formative experience.
Okay.
And the difference is like it can be creepy. It can like it's like light and day. It's like they can be really cynical. They can be really nihilistic and misanthropic. Like they don't like people.
Well, what's
like
the
I
piece? What's the piece? Is it your experience of working on yourself is the piece that's missing, or?
No, it's having been, I would describe it as, being like cradled by stories and like art and
Okay,
right.
okay, okay.
So like story, yeah. So we have tasted the same like despair, like like life fucking sucks and people and like
Yeah.
things are shitty and terrible. But like and then they spiral into fuck people, fuck whoever, fuck like just screw other people. And I'm like everything sucks, but you know. I know somewhere in my head that things can be better
Yeah, yeah.
because somebody wrote a song, somebody wrote a play. Like I no matter
Right.
how shitty things get, I live in a world where somebody wrote those things, right?
Yeah.
Somebody made art for other people. And
Okay.
I can say these things now, but like if you've had those like emotional experiences versus you've not, then like the difference in your quality of life is it can be tremendous. Like so I when I read stuff like like incel forums and like that kind of sphere of just people who are really bitter and angry and upset, and like I relate to a lot of that. Like I recognize the loneliness, I recognize the despair. Like it's familiar to me, but like there is a rock bottom that I never reached because I had like this safety net of other people, basically, right? Like and
Mm,
it not even necessarily living people, right? It could be just books. and
right.
and so it's like, yeah, like to me, when I see that difference, I'm like, oh, like storytellers and artists and musicians, like all of these people, they form like this support lattice that keeps me optimistic. It makes like, so even if let's say the rest of my life is gonna be shit, like for some reason, like let's say I'm gonna get like a terminal disease, or I'm gonna like something just very bad's gonna happen to me, and like my life's gonna be really miserable and whatever, like I will still be like, uh what can I do for the next kid that's like me, and
Mm,
I don't think I do that because I want to be perceived as a good person, or I want to be, you know I want people to think, oh wow, these are so great. Like even if no one knows about it, like I just feel like it's like my duty in a way. Like it was
okay.
it's like it was given to me. I'm passing it on. It's like
I see.
it's the way it is. And so this is a very long-winded way of explaining what I'm trying to say, but like so there's this whole circuit, right? And then there's people who live without it, and it's not their fault. It's like they were born and raised in a situation without that light, basically, and it's dark. And like when I compare my experience of life with their experience, it's like from once I see that difference, I feel like I can then make assumptions like, I say sometimes the meaning of life is friends. And it may not necessarily be like, oh, you have to go and make friends with your neighbor or like some guy down the street and like you have to shake hands and play chess with them. Like it's not that. It's just, we are social creatures fundamentally. And like, our language is social, right? Like we all learn to speak from other people. Like we didn't invent our own language. Like we share language with other people. And like, same is true for everything. Like everything we do is shared. Like our food is grown by other people, like we live in a society, right? And the degree, like the more I examine this, the more I find that the degree to which like life is joyful and meaningful and just any positive adjective you can think of, it's like where there is goodness or light or whatever, you will find that there are people sharing in that pursuit somehow. And where there is darkness and what, like the opposite, like you'll find it's the absence of that. And like even I have a thread about like it's a thread about like mana and chi and like woo, that kind of like magic-y stuff. And so I was using like Star Wars as an analogy, and I was like, there's like a Darth Vader quote. And I'm not even a Star Wars fan, but like, I'm familiar with the metaphors and ideas and stuff. And like, so Darth Vader says things like, if only you knew the power of the dark side, right?
Yeah.
And like what does that mean? And what it really means, I think, is that if you're willing to fight dirty, if you're willing to like manipulate and exploit other people, if you're willing to let your hate and fear and anger and resentment motivate you, that is a very powerful motivating force, and it can drive you to achieve great things. It really can. But the problem, and I have sometimes thought, maybe something gets you down, or like someone's unfair to you, and you're like, fuck, I'm gonna channel my dark energy and get back at them or whatever, right? And there's that. But then when I reflect on it, I realize that the problem with the dark side is that it is the path without friends. Meaning, like, if you have to control people if you have to get what you want through force, meaning by having more power than other person and like dominating them into getting what you want, then like you may be the most powerful individual in your sphere, but like everything you get is because of the power you have. And one thing, like nobody can hold on to power forever, so like eventually you will lose it. But even if that weren't the case, it's like, how can you enjoy life when everything you get is because people are scared of you, or it's like you don't really deserve it. Nobody really, or you don't really like you have to always watch your back in case, like in that worldview of like might makes right. You have to always watch your back, because what if your second in command decides that he wants your throne now? So you can't even relax. You're always living in fear. And like so it's the path without friends, and it's insecure, it's frightful,
if you play it
scary.
out to the end, it doesn't go well.
Yeah. And so like, and the alternative to that is friends. Like the alternative is like, you have people who I look out for you, you look out for me, we take care of each other, we trust each other. Like, yeah, sometimes we'll get burnt, because that's like the nature of like sharing with other people. Like people will disappoint you and stuff like that. But like, it's better that slightly painful and frustrating experience is better than like like trying to control everything by yourself and being this very tight, constrained individual.
Well, can I make an observation that's really interesting? Because I know, sorry, I'm deciding it's interesting. But like,
yes.
So you're talking about the books kind of being your foundation, and we were kind of joking about like, it does come back around, I promise. It's like, okay, and then you connected it. But it actually, it's not that odd to connect the stories and narratives and then loving people and having friends, because like for me, I kind of see the two greatest commandments from Jesus given. Love God, which is God. Right. I'm going to stretch it. You could say the narrative of God, the stories. Sure. I mean, God had to be given through story to people to understand the concept of God. So we could say that with the stories, and then love your neighbor as yourself which is the
Yeah.
friends. So to me,
Right.
they're actually really like quite tightly linked. So that's interesting that
Yeah.
you came up with that.
Yeah. I feel you. It's one of those. It's funny. It's like I think part of the reason I took so long to explain it is because I don't have much practice making this particular point, because
Okay.
once you see it the way I see it, or like, okay, for me, once I've seen it, like it becomes self-evident so quickly that it then doesn't need explanation. So I'm actually really glad you asked me that, because it will definitely be helpful for someone who doesn't see it. And like I want to be careful not to be like, um there's this thing where if you have a little bit of privilege, and like you once something is kind of obvious to you, and then someone to whom a thing is not obvious, they ask you, wait, why do you say that, or why do you do that? And then you're like, because it's obvious. And then they're like,
Right.
oh,
And then
right?
it comes
Yeah.
across as like a little bit like, oh, great, thanks.
Yeah, like, oh, just be happy. Oh, depression cured. It's like, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
right.
explain. But that's where
Like,
the explaining part comes in. Do you want to go into? And we don't have to because we could move on totally. But like you brought up the whole loneliness of the incel type thing, and that brings me back to the idea of like the whole men and friends and
yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
it's not talked about. Like women can totally be very vocal about anything to do
Right,
with um their friends or wanting friends or missing friends or whatever, but I
right.
feel like
Yeah.
men don't have that
Mm.
opportunity without judgment.
Right, right. So I'm pretty lucky in that. So when I was a teenager, I was drawn to music, and it was just obvious to me that, again, some things are obvious and some things are not, and it's the same problem. But I was I'm from Singapore, and Singapore is kind of known to be kind of boring, kind of clinical, kind of like very utilitarian. Like everyone's like, oh, study hard, get a good job, like have like enjoy your retirement, like don't like it's kind of
Okay.
peop- if you Google it, people will say that it's boring. I mean, it's the image is a little bit overrepresented. Like we are people. It's not like we are robots, but like there is some truth in the cliche. Like people don't seem to know how to let loose and then have a good time. Like people don't. There's it's not like there's dancing in the streets or anything like that. Like we're slowly loosening up. We are getting to it, but like the culture is still, the atmosphere, people will say, is it's very clean, it's almost sterile, like that's the kind of vibe.
Mm.
And when I was a teenager, I was very much I didn't like that. Like it wasn't, I mean, I'm happy and grateful for the safety and all of those things, but like I was always like, show me something real, show me some passion, show me some, because I was reading those books as a kid, right? I was reading all these exciting stories, and I'm like, life should be exciting, it should be an adventure. And so when I was a teenager, I was like, oh wow, like I think one of my friends brought me to a rock show that was like for there's like, it was like a charity relief. Oh, it was after the tsunami in like in Sri Lanka, that area,
Yeah.
Indonesia, and they were raising money for charity, and so there was like bands playing, and so I went to see that, and like it blew my mind. It was like, wow, like these guys are getting up on stage, telling people what to do, clap your hands, cheer, sing along, and they're like screaming, and like there's like sad songs sometimes, and it's just what drew me to it was that, if you think about it, a rock star is like, people talk about rock stars as cool, but like rock stars are also very vulnerable. They share their feelings, they wear their hearts on their sleeves, they sing, like Bon Jovi singing, like they're just singing about like, you broke my heart, all that kind of thing, and they do that, and like the audience is like roaring and loving them, and it's like high status thing to do, and it's sexy. And I saw that, I'm like, yes, give it to me. I want.
Yeah.
And I sought that as a musician and a songwriter. And so for me, I have always believed, so a lot of guys believe that almost any form of emotional expression is weakness. And I never bought into that. I've always known. So to me, it was always obvious, and it was obvious because I studied rock stars, and if you watch like the Foo Fighters, like Dave Grohl, he's got this beard and long hair and like this, but like if you watch his banter, he speaks very intimately with his audience. Like it's almost like everyone's in his bedroom and he's like, thank you guys for hanging out, it means a lot to me. Like he talks about his feelings, and it just feels really inclusive and supportive. And yeah, so for me, I have always wanted to be a part of that. I feel like in my family, my family is not very emotionally open. Like we don't discuss our feelings and stuff like that. So I was very desperate for that stuff. But, I am a guy and I have guy friends, and I have witnessed a lot of guys struggling with emotional intimacy, struggling to talk about their feelings, many of them don't even realize that that's what they're struggling with. It's like, it's like if they're raised in an environment where, again, like their family doesn't talk about it, and they didn't read the books that I've read, and they didn't go to a rock concert or whatever. Like, I mean, so you asked about so women are able to talk. Yeah, so women are able to do it more openly. And it's like a woman seeking support from other women. I think it's a very natural thing, whereas like a man seeking support from other men, there is. I'll frame it like this. Men are afraid. So how men say not all men, but like men are just as afraid of other men as women are afraid of men. Like the fear of like it, and I'm very passionate about this. It's like a very small group of assholes can corrupt/dominate an entire group of people, like a large group of people. Like, it just takes a few bullies, and like everyone else lives in fear of being bullied, then everyone's like, one person gets bullied publicly in front of everybody else,
yes,
and then everyone else is afraid of being the next victim.
Yeah.
And so like one person's act of bullying can terrorize like 90 plus people, and every guy is afraid that every other guy might potentially like expose him to the rest of the guys. It's that dominance ritual / hierarchy. And I honest, having spoken to like thousands of guys at this point, I honestly think like less than 10% of guys, in my experience, maybe 20%, like, so more than half of guys that I've spoken to, like hundreds of men, they have no interest in dominating other men, and they don't like the dominance games that other men play, but like they don't want to speak up. They don't want to, like they are scared. So it's very difficult for men to say that they're scared, because if you say that you're scared, then like that invites more bullying. So like if a woman says, like I'm scared or I'm upset or whatever, it's like it's an invitation to other women to support her.
Yeah.
But if a high status man who knows how to, so if I say I can say I'm scared or I'm upset or whatever, I can do it in a skillful, artful way that people find appealing, because I have that like rock star background. But like for a guy who doesn't have that high skill, high status background, like saying it from the like as an average guy will very likely invite bullying and mockery and whatever from other guys who are also scared. Like it's very tragic. Like
well, what's the way to say it then? So there is a way to say it to be vulnerable without inviting criticism?
Kind of, but you have to be good at. That's a good question, but it requires a lot of work in a sense. You need to know your audience, and you need to know how you will respond to hecklers, basically, right? It's like doing stand up, right? Like if you're gonna tell jokes, like somebody in the crowd might shout something out, and you must be prepared for that, and you must be able to like I'm sorry you're not having a good time. But like, so you have to be, you can't
have to almost
freeze.
like be like, I am expecting to have someone say something, and then you have something ready almost.
It doesn't need to be something like clever or fantastic, but you kind of just need to be cool, right? And it's very difficult to be like, so once you know how to be cool, it's easy, but figuring out how to be cool is daunting. Like you have to do a lot of
research on the rock stars, like.
I recommend it. I recommend that every guy like even if you don't intend to go on stage and be a rock star yourself, I recommend that every guy study high status men who have demonstrated vulnerability successfully. And yeah, one of the things is well, every guy will have a different approach. So like there are many paths to winning male respect. Performance in something, like being good at anything, I think is so men are very quick to respect performance in some sphere, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's like you may not win over every guy, but like you need like your thing that you have respect from other guys for that thing, and then you can parlay that respect into something else, which is a skill in itself, I guess. But like yeah, so my advice to like my nephews, for example, is things like you should well, so I wouldn't say, well, you're making me realize I haven't thought about this as deeply as I wish I had. Like I chat about it a bit here and there, but like it's nice to try and go into detail on this, and it's a bit embarrassing to realize that I haven't gone into as much detail as I would like. I might make this a chapter in my book for my next version,
Well,
because
you
it's very
could.
important.
Well, you do talk about the rock star thing in the other video of yours I watched was the masculinity one. Do you remember that? You did that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, you mentioned about how the idea that they're not afraid of looking feminine or feminized somewhat, not like tons, because I don't think feminine when I think rock star, but they do like the eyeliner and like I'm thinking, like Mick Jagger, and there's that sort of vibe, but they're so desired by women.
Yeah.
And men want to be them. So the idea that I like the idea that you are bringing up about the rock star and studying them, because you mentioned here about how they share certain little vulnerabilities, say when they're chatting with the audience or like that, but they also present as, I don't want to say presenting feminine, but remember the term metrosexual back in the day?
Sure. Yeah.
That's not really used anymore, but it's like guys who are like, I like to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And maybe that, and maybe the rock stars do take it a degree forward, but they're like, I'm expressing myself, and it's a traditionally female thing to put eyeliner on, but I'm doing it and I'm making it look cool. So it does seem like maybe there's something to the studying the rock star thing. I mean, maybe like don't pursue the drugs and like the throngs of groupies, but I mean, there's something to it. I've never, I have 3 boys. So I am kind of like, okay, I will note this.
You know what's interesting? A thing that a lot of men love is wrestling, WWE.
Yeah.
Right? And
they totally dress up.
Right? It's theater. It's drag. It's like masculine drag. It's a performance of. It's first of all, it's a production, right? It's a theater production, and it's if you think it's men expressing it's like they have storylines and there's like betrayal.
It's like a soap opera for men, but performed with very physicality.
Yeah. So that is, again, I would recommend studying WWE a little bit. Like, just there are all these things you can figure out. And
well, that's cool.
I guess the other thing I would say, like to my nephews, for example, is again, so in line with my general thesis of talk to lots of people. Like it could be that if you're a guy, you have like your 5 guy friends, and they're all kind of like gruff and stiff, and like they may be open to talk. Like I think a thing that definitely happens is that a group of guys will, as a group, be less sensitive and vulnerable than they will each be individually. Like there's a dynamic that happens where like they try to impress each other, or they each, they're each assuming that everybody else wants to be impressed, or like, they'll start doing more pranks, they'll start cracking like shittier jokes. Like it's just this dynamic, this like herd dynamic, I guess. And I would recommend to each guy, like if you tend to hang out with like a group of friends at a time, like try to get some alone time with each guy. Like try to you go drinking with your friends and get some alone time with them and ask them questions.
The one-on-one time, yeah.
Yeah, it really, and then like once you have done that a few times, and again, very often now that I'm thinking about it, it's like if there's 5 guys and there's like one guy who's like the like ringleader, who's like very aggressive and domineering, then everyone else will like follow suit behind that guy. And then it's ruined. Like the other 4 guys without that guy might be more intimate and vulnerable with each other. And so it's just being mindful of that dynamic. I think guys don't even realize that dynamic happens. That, some domineering, slightly bullyish person, and they might be a nice person by themselves, or it's just kind of like roles that people fall into. Be sensitive to individuals. Try to talk to people, and I mean you don't have to like come out and blurt out all your vulnerabilities and feelings all at once, but you can like test the waters.
Totally, I was thinking that. I'm like, test the waters.
Oh yeah, and another thing that I would recommend that's not obvious is I would tell guys, and not enough people tell guys this, to watch TV shows and movies written by women and to read books written by women. Because I wouldn't tweet about this because it's hard to convey tone, but I am pretty good with talking with women, like relative to guys. Like
you're like, how do I'm good at talking with women. Send. It's like, what are we supposed to do with this?
Right, but it's the thing is, it's true, and it's something that a lot of guys struggle with, and they would love to get better at it. Women would love it if men got better at it.
I know, we would. Yes.
Right, and a big part of the problem is that most media is written by men, directed by men, produced by men. And when there are like movies and stuff, like it's like women's movies, like Little Women or whatever, and like men avoid that, like because it just, why would you watch, like there's a Netflix show called Working Moms, right? And like no guy is like, I'm thinking of like I'm scrolling through a list of guys in my head, and like I can't think of any guy who would sit down and voluntarily watch Working Moms by himself. But he should, because the dialogue in TV shows written by women with female characters, they show you how women discuss, and like, so very often when men say they don't understand women, it's, in my opinion, it's like, it's things like, subtext and like implicit allusions and stuff like that, which is, it's not a foreign I mean, so if you've only ever discussed like beers with and sports with other guys, like that will feel like a foreign language, but like you can learn it from exposure. It's not rocket science, it's
watch Mean Girls. It's very clear.
Yes, it's my favorite movie of all time.
Really? And, I love it.
Open a new tab and Google Visagan v Mean Girls. Okay. I have like a
I will, because I love that. Yeah. It's the ultimate art of war for women. Yes.
I have in one of my threads, I even argue that Mean Girls explains international relations very well. Like because
I'll have to look that one
up.
It does.
It follows. It's just I'll send it to you later, but it's like, it is power dynamics, right? It's how people suss each other out and figure out what. And so I think guys who are not familiar with that mode of interaction, they feel overwhelmed and they feel it's like what's going on? I don't understand what's going on. People are talking and they seem to be figuring stuff out without saying things explicitly, and I don't. And they just feel lost and confused and suspicious even. And it doesn't have to be like that. Like it's a source of relief, I think, for men to to understand like implicit communication. Like it's I mean it's a great life skill in general, right? And
well, there are so
if
many
you
novels written by women. Like the novel is a female thing. It's not super difficult to
I agree.
find female written for the novel. I guess when it comes to movies and media, that's usually a man's game. But cool. I think this is a good spot to wrap it up.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I'm so glad I could finally chat with you here, Fizza. Thanks for coming on.
This was fun.